what's happening in your community now. Not just, I mean, I guess there's some difference between passively let it wash over you and actively choosing it. So, in 1930s Germany, I guess one should choose Nazism as one's authentic mode of existence. By the way, that's not a logical consequence. If were Heidegger writing in Australia in the 1930s, he probably would have been advocating running a sheep station or something. It's just the happening of a community. But Heidegger asserts, now maybe he's being inconsistent here, one would completely misunderstand the phenomenon of resolute openness when we're to suppose that it consists simply in taking up and seizing ready-made and recommended possibilities. This is what Sartre, the sort of thing Sartre will say, but you know, any possibility is open for you to choose, not just what's locally happening. And if Heidegger is committed to the latter, then Nazism is just one option among many. You could be a monk, you could be a liberal Democrat, you could be a pig farmer. I mean, so now we get to what I'll call a weak plus reason, a better reason, and it's Heidegger's pragmatism. I could put up a number of quotes in which pragmatism, Heidegger's for being in time, in which pragmatism comes to the fore. I've chosen not to do that just for reasons of time, and some of the quotes are really very hard to understand. But I'll point out two recent writers. Mark Okrand has a book called Heidegger's Pragmatism, and Richard Rorty has a number of articles. Two is Overcoming the Tradition, Heidegger and Dewey. Dewey, of course, is an American pragmatist. This is from his collection of essays, Consequences of Pragmatism. Later collection, Heidegger Contingency of Pragmatism, and there's others. One will come across articles comparing Heidegger and Dewey in history. This is not a live topic anymore. So let's just grant that Heidegger is a pragmatist in being in time. He's asking you to accept a lot. Trying to prove that would take us another hour. So what is pragmatism? Well, let's start with the classical conception of truth and knowledge. A couple of folks on that, Plato, of course, the theory of forms. Why are the forms the proper object of philosophical study? They're changeless and eternal. Stuff here comes to be, passes away, about which we can only have opinion, but the forms, well, they don't change. You could have real knowledge of them, and that's real truth. Descartes thought that knowledge had to have a certain kind of certainty, that if you introduce skeptical doubts, such as, well, maybe you're dreaming now, or maybe all the ideas in your mind are produced by an evil deceiver. Unless you can vanquish those, you don't have certainty, and consequently you don't have knowledge. By the way, both Plato and Descartes, Descartes was a real mathematician. Plato, I don't know how much math Plato really knew back then. But they both were impressed with mathematical truth, how certain it was, and they thought, wouldn't it be neat if all knowledge would be that certain? Of course, to this classical conception, various skeptical doubts have arisen. I'll just list a few. Our historical location limits us. I mean, here we are in America 2010. Suppose we were born in China 2,000 years ago, or suppose we were suppose it was America 100 years from now. And what would we think is true? Things change. So how can we be certain now? These so-called eternal truths, like what is justice, what is beauty, and so on, well, they're just historical contingencies. It's what a bunch of people happen to agree on a particular point in time. There's nothing eternal or changeless about them. Famously, Descartes really can't resolve the skeptical doubts. He's trapped in a circle about he needs God's existence to guarantee the truth of our ideas. And and he sort of assumes the truth of our ideas to get to God's existence. There's other kind of skeptical doubts you can do. I think one way to explain pragmatism is to say that pragmatism accepts these, and then it doesn't say, oh, well, then we can't have truth. What it does is it doesn't discard the notion of truth, it just redefines it. So you have a few, these are well-known quotes from William James's famous essay on pragmatism, a new name for some old ways of thinking. The true is the name of whatever proves itself to be good in the way of beliefs, and good too for definite assignable reasons. The true, to put it briefly, is only the expedient in our way of thinking, just as the right is only the expedient in the way of behaving. Expedient in almost any fashion, and expedient in the long run and on the whole. There's nothing here about corresponding with reality. There's nothing here about certainty. There's nothing here about timelessness or changelessness. It's just what's expedient. When you read different pragmatists, you'll come up with what I'll call the pragmatist pattern. Well, the first is not pragmatist. The classical idea of truth is that truth is our certain knowledge of the way the world really is. Skeptical doubt says, nah, can't have that. So pragmatism might say truth is what is expedient for our ways of thinking. That's William James. A later pragmatist, Richard Rorty, will say truth is simply a compliment paid to sentences seen to be paying their own way. I want to, I don't know if this will just take up time and confuse things, but I want to point out that there's, to me, it's John Stuart Mill in On Liberty, his famous idea of allowing free discussion having to do with the truth. Whether Mill is a pragmatist, he has some of the earmarks of one. He's a fallibilist. He says, well, anybody could be wrong, and so on. If you read him in a non-pragmatist way, he's saying, and this is a standard way of reading, the best way to get at the truth is through the unrestricted discussion of ideas. If you read him in a pragmatist way, and I'm not saying this is right, it's just, were you to read him this way, you would have him saying truth just is what emerges from the unrestricted discussion of ideas. It's not, this says it's a method to get at the truth. This just says, look, we're going to call what comes out of this free discussion truth. All right, back to Heidegger. And these are the, it's kind of terminological funniness here, the unpublished seminars. They're published in Facebook, but you know what I mean. This is a seminar that he gave called The Essence and Concepts of History, Nature, History, and the State. These are some selected quotes. And when I say selected, I'm not trying to slant this in some way, like he says this, and then the next sentence says, kind of takes it back. I mean, it's clear he means this stuff. The true Führer understands things and puts into action what the people and the state are. Another quote, the Führer has a living bond with the being of the people, which stems from a unity of blood and race. Sometimes he'll say blood and earth. Blut und Boden was a Nazi slogan. Blood and earth. The people are a folkish organism, a Germanic state of the German nation. And clearly, National Socialist doctrine, up one side and down the other. With each new moment, the Führer and the people will be bound more closely in order to realize the essence of their state, that is, their being. Growing together, they will oppose the two threatening forces, death and the devil, that is, impermanence and the falling away from one's own essence, with their meaningful historical being and will. Another seminar he gave, which he titled The Essence of Truth, he is couched as a commentary on Heraclitus, or actually one of the fragments. And in the fragment, Heraclitus says, well, here's the way Heidegger translates it. Strife is the essence of the entity.